What's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. On today's show, Bo Nix is very bad at quarterback, and that's terrible news for the Raiders this week. The Golden Knights are back in action, and they've got some company in the group that signs players acquitted of sexual assault over the summer. A former UNLV coach has ditched a bunch of players again, and UNLV, can they finally beat Boise State and claim a Mountain West championship? Big shout out to Lorenzo Valdez. He is sponsoring today's show, but I want to share with you what he told me. He said that he's been listening to my show all throughout his high school years. He told me he's now a broke college student and wanted to send me money anyways. I told him, no, you're not sending me money as a broke college student. He's already suffered enough listening to me while in high school. Like when I was in high school, I was screaming at the top of my lungs when I drove around to whatever my favorite songs were. I still do that. But Lorenzo was listening to me. I almost feel bad for Lorenzo. But shout out to Lorenzo for listening to the show, listening to me for as long as he has. I really appreciate that kind of loyalty. If you want to sponsor any part of the show, email me at technicallycorrectvegas@gmail.com and we'll do something fun. We'll make it fun. I appreciate everybody that has done something this week to help me out. It really means a lot to have that much support when I'm first starting this. Here we go. The Raiders play the Denver Broncos this weekend. And the Raiders draft pick, it's on the line here. The Raiders are hurtling towards a top pick in the NFL draft. They could end up getting the number one pick, but Bo Nix might be standing in their way. Usually you would see a 10-2 team facing a 2-10 team, and well, that's going to be easy. They're going to be 11-2. They're Super Bowl contenders, and the last place team gets another loss. But Bo Nix is bad, and the Broncos can't score. These two teams already played once. Denver did win the game. It was 10-7. 10-7 was the final score between a team that is now 10-2 and a team that's 2-10. Bo Nix had a monster game against the Raiders. He threw for a whopping 150 yards. He rushed for -2, threw 2 interceptions. He was miserable. He gave the Raiders a chance to win a game in which they only scored 7 points. And then we've got this stat. This is from Tom Straken on Twitter. The Raiders play zone coverage, zone 84% of the time, most in the NFL. Bo Nix this season against zone defense is 32nd in QBR, 37th in yards per attempt, and he's thrown 7 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. 37th in yards per attempt is hilarious when you count how many teams there are in the NFL because there aren't 37. So Bo Nix is horrible against zone. The Raiders play it all the time, more than anybody else in the NFL, and that's terrible news for the Raiders draft pick, right? This Denver team, they don't blow anyone out. They've played 12 games this year. 11 of them have been decided by 1 score. They beat Dallas by like 20 points every other game within 1 score. The last 4 weeks have all been wins by the Broncos by 3 points or less. This team, they don't win by a lot of points. Their defense is awesome, so you can't score a ton of points on them. And then Bo Nix is terrible, so he doesn't allow the Broncos to score a lot of points. That's just how their games go, so they all come down to the fourth quarters. And sometimes they need a Daniel Carlson missed field goal. Sometimes they need to stop a 2-point conversion in overtime, but ultimately they're winning games by the fewest amount of points possible, which means the Raiders, even the Raiders, should be in this game, should have a chance to win it. I'd be surprised if we go into the fourth quarter and Denver is actually blowing the Raiders out because that's not what Denver does when they play football. So the Raiders have a shot. Now, bad news overall, but actually good news if you're looking at it from the draft pick standpoint. Max Crosby didn't practice on Thursday. He was limited on Wednesday and then did no practice on Thursday. Usually a backward step on the injury report during the week is a bad sign. Big red flag. We'll see what the actual update is here on Crosby. We'll see if, hey, he's fine, he's going to play. just had a day off. I don't know if Thursdays are normally veteran days off, but we'll see what Crosby's status and availability is. By the way, on Crosby, watching the Raiders this year, I have felt like Max Crosby's not been as good as he was before, right? It felt like there have been long stretches of games where Crosby doesn't make some sort of an impact or some sort of a play. But he's got 8 sacks in 12 games this year, which is above his career pace on a per-game basis. He's already tied his career high in tackles for loss this season. And like Crosby has been so good in his career that I guess I've just set such a high bar that I expect him to ruin every third play the opponent runs, something along those lines. And when he doesn't do that, I'm like, this guy's a bum. Where's Max Crosby? But his numbers are still excellent, right? Like, I'm like, he's not that good. And he's still got 8 sacks and 23 tackles for loss. Like, he has been very good this year. I will say, PFF does have him as the 17th best edge rusher in football. From 2021 through 2023, he was 2nd, 4th, and 4th in those grades. So maybe I'm right. Maybe. But the sacks, the tackles for loss, they're all there. I was even looking up like his run stops by PFF, and it's there too. The numbers are as good as they've been throughout his career. He's still having a great year, even though I was like, that guy's a bum. He's awesome to where his down years are still really, really good. But back on the draft pick. The Raiders, here's why it's so critical to play quarterbacks that are good and not named Bo Nix. The Raiders are 2-10. Right now, they only have the 4th pick in the NFL draft. Tennessee's 1-11, the Giants are 2-11, and then New Orleans is also 2-10. And based on the tiebreakers, if the Raiders had one more win right now, if they had beaten Denver in that first game, they'd be all the way down at 7 in the draft. Remember, this team last year was 4-13. They were horrendous. They didn't get a top 5 pick because it's very hard to get a top 5 pick because there are often terrible teams in the NFL. So losing is critical. And Bo Nix is going to make that a little bit difficult for the Raiders. Good thing the Denver defense is really good, but Bo Nix is going to be out here making sure the Raiders have a chance to win again. Now, the Raiders this year have a chance at the number 1 overall pick. FTN Fantasy uses DVOA to come up with projections for the rest of the season. And they do this at the top end, right? You can go and see playoff percentages, who's most likely to be in the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, and all that. We don't have to worry about that with the Raiders. Right now, if you look at the DVOA projections, the Raiders have the 2nd best chance to get the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. The Titans are 1st, and they've got a 48.3% chance to get there. But the Raiders are 2nd, a 23% chance to land the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And by the way, if you want to understand why tanking is good, the Raiders are 2nd in this right now. Why? Because they beat the Titans. They played the Titans, they beat the Titans, right? The Raiders hired a coach who wants to go win every game, and with a roster that can't win, and they beat Tennessee, and now they might not get the number 1 pick because of that win over Tennessee. That's why tanking's important. That's why losing's important when you're this bad. But the Raiders have the 2nd best chances, so you're cheering for a Tennessee win. But for the Raiders, 2-10, DVOA projections, 1.1 more wins this season, 1.1. The rest of the schedule, they've got Denver this week. I just explained to you why they've got a shot, Bo Nix. And then they go to Philadelphia and to Houston, which should be losses. They're on the road. They're teams that are either in the playoffs or right on the outside. But I'll say this, Philly and Houston, similar to Denver, they're teams that don't give up a lot of points, but there's enough offensive struggles that the blowouts aren't really there. So those are both teams that the Raiders aren't better than, and they might not have an actual chance, but in the 4th quarter, they might only be down by 4 points. And there might be a chance to win if Geno Smith puts together a drive, or we see some sort of great defensive play, or maybe Genty snaps off a 70-yard run, whatever it is, right? They might be one play away from winning one of those 2 games because of the way those 2 teams win games. Giants at home is the obvious one that sticks out as a probable win. That's a massive game for the draft. We'll see what those two teams do going into it. But again, the Giants are as one of these 2-win teams. There's a real chance that that game decides the number 2 pick in the NFL draft, and maybe number 1 if Tennessee screws up and wins a game or two here. But that'll be a massive game. And then they finish with Kansas City. Big question is really going to be, are the Chiefs in a playoff spot, or at least have a shot at the playoffs, because they keep losing games and they're on the outside. Like Kansas City most likely is playing for something in that game. I'll give you the nightmare scenario that Raiders fans would probably enjoy and maybe should enjoy. But the nightmare scenarios where the Raiders are sitting at the number 1 pick going into the final week. Kansas City has to win to make the playoffs, and then the Raiders win. And they eliminate Kansas City from the playoffs. That's the good thing, that you'd be excited to knock your rival out. But the bad thing would be, you don't get the number 1 pick anymore because Tennessee just dropped you to hurt yourself in the process. So that'd be a fun thing to decide between if you're a fan. Do you want the number 1 pick, or do you want to keep the Chiefs out of the playoffs? Now, Tennessee chasing the Titans here. Tennessee's remaining schedule, they're at Cleveland, they're at San Francisco. They play the Chiefs as well. New Orleans and at Jacksonville. Cleveland's winnable because Shedeur Sanders is not a good quarterback. But Cleveland's defense is awesome, so would be a little bit of surprise there. That New Orleans game, which, by the way, is the same week as Giants-Raiders. We could have an awesome week of tanking football, deciding the number 1 pick in the second to last week of the season. That's going to be a huge one, right? New Orleans, Tennessee is going to be massive. That's probably going to be the weekend that sort of determines where these teams stand in the draft. We need to get those. Can we get those flex to Sunday Night Football? Can we do duo Sunday Night Football between those two? Because I'd be on board for that. One other interesting note on Tennessee here. Tiebreaker for draft position is strength of schedule, which is just opponent win percentage. That's all it is. And the easier your strength of schedule is, the better your pick is. And the theory is, hey, you both went 3-14, but your schedule was easier, so you were probably worse. You get the higher pick. That's the idea. The Raiders have a very high strength of schedule. Right now, across all teams in the league, 3rd highest. One team that has a higher strength of schedule is Tennessee. So there is a chance that the Raiders and Titans could finish with the same amount of wins. The Raiders could actually win that tiebreaker and get the number 1 pick. There aren't many teams they'll win that tiebreaker against this year, but the Titans could actually be one of those. So that's a good sign for the Raiders. But chasing the number 1 pick, it's fun. Regardless of what the Titans do, the Raiders are in good shape for a good pick. DVOA has them at an 88% chance to get a top 5 pick. So they're in good shape. Maybe they can draft another running back, Jeremiah Love, in the top 5. But they are in good shape for a good pick. The teams left on the schedule should, for the most part, beat them. But Bo Nix is out here to ruin everybody's dreams. One last thing on the Raiders going into this game, because I thought this was interesting, and it ties in a little bit to all of what I've been talking about with tanking and draft picks and all of that. The Raiders don't have Colton Miller, their best offensive lineman. He has been out with an ankle injury since very late in September, but he could come back this year. And Pete Carroll said earlier this week that the Raiders' record won't dictate if Colton Miller returns, right? And I just spent 15 minutes telling you how great tanking is and how much you should want to lose if you're the Raiders right now, because you need the draft pick. That's the important capital to get players to help you in the future. Do you need a quarterback of the future? You need a higher pick. But what I'm going to say is contradictory to that. If Colton Miller is healthy, Colton Miller should absolutely come back and play football. As much as I am on board with tanking, as much as I am on board with, hey, losing these games, players don't get to play very long in the NFL, right? There are some quarterbacks that play forever, but for the most part, NFL players do not get to play for that long. And they don't get to play in their prime for that long either, which is where Colton Miller is. If he's healthy, if he's able to come back and play in what are, meaningless games for the Raiders in the playoffs, but important for their pick, he should absolutely come back and play, right? Yes, it's going to give the Raiders a better chance to win games because it gives them at least one good offensive lineman, but he should absolutely do that because it's good for him and good for the players. So despite telling you tank, lose, That's not what the players do, and it's not what Colton Miller should be thinking about. Obviously, you don't bring him back if he's not 100%. That would be stupid. But if Colton Miller's 100% with 3 games to go, bring him back. Like, yes, let him play. Let him play left tackle, and let's play some football. So I am always going to be on board with healthy players coming back and playing, because that's not something we should be interested in robbing the players of because you need to tank or lose games. And by the way, Pete Carroll has no interest in all of this. Like, that's probably the worst part of this, is Pete Carroll has no interest in anything I just said about losing to make sure you get the high pick. I'm not saying a coach should coach the tank. You'll get fined for that. But they won't even play the young guys, right? You don't have to call plays to lose. You don't have the players trying to lose, but play Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. Throw the ball to Jack Besh. Let the young guy, like, we don't need to see veterans anymore. The veterans have gotten you to 2 wins. The veterans have gotten you eliminated from the playoffs, and it's the first week of December. Throw the ball to Jack Besh. Tyler Lockett doesn't need any more targets. It'll be fine. Now it's time for Bischoff's Briefs. Bischoff's Briefs does have a sponsor next week. You're not going to have to hear me beg for this one. Nobody's sponsoring the start of the show next week, but you're not going to have to hear me beg next week. We got a good one coming for all 5 days of next week. It's a fun one. But we start in Bischoff's Briefs with the Golden Knights, who are playing against the New Jersey Devils, a 4 p.m. start out on the East Coast, start of their long East Coast road trip. New Jersey this year is 16-10-1, which is the 10th best record in the NHL. But New Jersey has been outscored at 5-on-5 by 14. Like, not just a little bit, by 14. That's the 5th worst mark in the NHL. That's how do they have the 10th best record? Their special teams have been very good. If you do power play and penalty kill on a per minute basis, they are scoring the 8th most goals per minute on the power play, and they're allowing the 6th fewest goals per minute on the penalty kill. They're also one of 6 teams that have not allowed a shorthanded goal this season. So they've been very good on the power play, very good on the penalty kill. Does that explain how they're top 10 despite being bottom 5 in 5-on-5 goals? No, but maybe that's all it is. I would say right now, this is game 4 for New Jersey of a 4-game homestand. They've lost all 3 of them in regulation. So they're not playing well at the moment either, giving up a lot of goals in those games. This team, I don't think they're as good as their record just based on what we briefly know about New Jersey. So does that mean the Golden Knights are going to go to New Jersey and beat them? I have no idea who's playing for the Golden Knights. But we'll see how good they are and how much they can make the Golden Knights pay. Obviously, they're going to beat them 5-0 with all 5 goals at 5-on-5 just to start making up that difference there. Also in the NHL, though, the Hurricanes are responsible for the signing of Cal Foote. So Cal Foote, like Carter Hart, was one of the 5 hockey players in the sexual assault trial over the summer. They were all acquitted, but Cal Foote earlier this week signed with the Chicago Wolves of the AHL. That is the primary minor league team of the Hurricanes, right? Important note, AHL teams can sign players that aren't like a part of the NHL organization, right? Like, it's not hey, if an AHL team signs a player, that means he's automatically in the Hurricanes organization. But they signed Cal Foote, and it was announced as the Chicago Wolves have signed Cal Foote. Well, the governor of the Chicago Wolves, Wendell Young, told Front Office Sports, 100% not a Chicago Wolves signing. We understand the magnitude of this signing and everything surrounding it. The signing is out of our control. But now it is our duty as an organization, our duty to our fans to listen to the perspective and understand. Young also told Front Office Sports that the first time he heard about the potential signing was not from the Hurricanes, but was from Cal Foote's agent. What a cowardly move by the Hurricanes. Unbelievably cowardly by the Carolina Hurricanes. They know there's going to be backlash from signing one of these players. Hello, Golden Knights over the last month or so. And instead of, signing him to an NHL contract and being the team that signs him, or at least putting their name on the AHL contract, hey, Chicago's signing him, we're doing this with Chicago. They just let him sign the AHL contract, get announced as a Chicago Wolves signing, and say nothing about it. And it takes a couple of days for the Chicago Wolves to actually clear up, hey, we didn't do this. We just have an affiliation with the NHL team, and they did this. They're the ones that signed Cal Foote here. It's not us. We didn't want to sign this guy. We didn't want this. Carolina Hurricanes did, and they just let the Chicago Wolves take that backlash for 2 days. Why are NHL teams so afraid of owning the moves that they're making? With both Carter Hart and Cal Foote, if it's worthwhile to sign them, stand up, take your criticism, and don't pawn it off on an AHL team. It's just unbelievable to me that you've got cowards that are like, yeah, let's sneak in a Cal Foote signing with the AHL team. We don't want to take any questions about it. We don't want to take any heat for it. So we'll make the Wolves take the backlash for it. And then their governor is going to have to talk to front office sports to clear the air here. Like, unbelievable. Sign him yourself. Grow up and sign him yourself and take the criticism for it that you know is going to come with it. Don't pawn it off on the Chicago Wolves. A more fun story in the NHL. Apparently, playing the Golden Knights makes you break the rules. Two of the more recent opponents of the Golden Knights have broken an NHL rule. Both Ottawa and San Jose, when playing the Golden Knights, went through pregame warmups without their helmets. ESPN did a story on this. Ottawa did it because they were trying to break a losing streak, and they did. The Sharks just did it. Will Smith told ESPN there was no specific reason. He said, quote, "It was a team decision. It was Saturday night in Vegas, so I think all the guys were pretty easy to do it." Whatever that means. But it's against NHL rules. Players are supposed to wear helmets in warmups. There is a grandfather clause, so if you were in the league before 2019, you don't have to do it. But players are supposed to wear helmets in warmups. And according to ESPN, the NHL is warning teams about breaking this rule. And I guess I'm a little confused. Why are they warning them? They broke the rule. You get a warning? Like, don't they have punishment? I assume you just fine the players who don't wear their helmets, so you'd be fining the whole team. But, like, what's the warning for? Just fine them. Like, if you went through the trouble of saying, hey, we need a rule. We need a rule put in here. We think this is important. And now they break it, and you just get to say, guys, don't do that. Come on, guys. We got to warn you now. Don't do that. Just fine them. The Runnin Rebels are back in action this weekend. They had 9 full days off between games, but now UNLV is at Stanford on Sunday. Quick side note. I will always complain about college basketball games on Sunday during the NFL season. I know, usually, why they exist. It's for television when there's college football on Saturday. You can't really break into many time slots during a college football Saturday, so you play the game on Sunday and you get to be on TV. It's exactly what UNLV did when they played Memphis. But this game is apparently on ACC Network Extra. What the hell? Hofstra and Pitt are playing on real ACC Network at 1 p.m. on Sunday, the same time UNLV and Stanford tip off, which means this game's not even on TV. They're playing on Sunday during the NFL season, and it's on ACC Network Extra. What the hell? What are we doing? Quick programming note for this show. There's a very good chance that I don't watch this game until Monday and don't talk about it until Tuesday on the show next week. Just keep that in mind. Now, Stanford is interesting. They are 7-1, but they've only played one team in the top 100. They beat St. Louis. Their loss is to Seattle, who's just outside the top 100. So are they any good? Don't know. They're 78th in KenPom. UNLV, by the way, is down to 139 after losing to Rutgers. But two things to watch. First, both teams play fast. UNLV is 13th in tempo. Stanford is 87th. So hopefully that gives us somewhat of a fun game. UNLV, in their wins, one of their keys has been offensive rebounding. They've got 3 wins on the year, and their average offensive rebounding rate is 45%, which just means they get 45% of their own missed shots. In the 5 losses, it's 26%. The national average is around 32 or 33%. So 45% of the wins, 26% in the losses. UNLV, they get a ton of rebounds, offensive rebounds, they win. Stanford is the 8th best defensive rebounding team in the country. Their opponents have only gotten 23% of their misses this season. So that's even below what UNLV's done in their 5 losses. Again, their schedule's been super easy. They haven't played good teams. not that UNLV is a good team, but they haven't played good teams that might beat them up on the board. So that's a key. We'll see how good Stanford actually is as a defensive rebounding team. And if they are good, UNLV could be in some trouble to find some extra offense there. By the way, quick side note, you guys see how I censored myself there? I think I can cuss. But I've got too much of a radio backbone in me to try to not cuss, try to censor myself when talking into a microphone. We'll see how much that changes as I do this and just do a podcast for everybody. Now, we've got an update on the WNBA. Again, there is no CBA for next season between the WNBA and the WNBA Players Association. They're negotiating for a new one. But Front Office Sports had a story on the WNBA's most recent CBA proposal to the Players Association. So the owners sent this proposal over, and it included more games. They played 40 games last season. Now, the story didn't specify how many more games, but it did say that the WNBA schedule with this proposal would start in mid-March, and the WNBA finals, would end in November. Comparison, last season started in mid-May. The finals ended on October 20th, and that was a 40-game season. So we're looking at like 2 months to the front of the season, a month to the back of the season. That's 20 more games in a calendar year. So are we looking at going from 40 to 60 WNBA games? That certainly seems possible with this. According to that story, players are fine with more games. They're actually not too worried about playing more games in the season. Their only complaint on this was the timing of it, because if the WNBA season starts in mid-March, that will be when the NCAA tournament is going on. And the WNBA has a weird setup where the college season is in the winter and then the professional season is in the summer, which means players play in the NCAA tournament, they get drafted, and then they play in the WNBA. And that all happens in the span of a couple of months. But if the season now starts in mid-March, when is the WNBA draft going to happen? Is it going to happen? It has to happen in the offseason. I guess baseball does theirs in the middle of the season, so maybe not. But in theory, it happens in the offseason, but your offseason is going to be the college basketball regular season. So are you drafting players in the middle of their regular season, and then fingers crossed they don't get hurt, and then they're joining the team like 2 or 3 weeks into the season? Are players who don't make the tournament going to be able to play before players that do make the tournament? That clearly seems like a calendar problem that would have to get solved. But the players apparently are not against more games, just when those games are played. And then we had one more detail from that story. The proposal the league made to the players. We've talked about this a little bit, but the max salary would be $1.1 million. That's up from $249,000 this last season. So a big increase there. The proposal would have given the players 15% of the WNBA's projected revenue. Again, what the players are mostly fighting for is not a specific dollar amount on their minimum salary, max salary, or a salary cap. They're fighting for a percentage of revenue. NBA and NFL, the setup is roughly 50% of the revenue of the league goes to set the salary cap for the players. That's what the WNBA is fighting for. I don't know if they want exactly 50%. I'm sure they would love that, but they probably take something lower. But that's the thing they're fighting for. And what the WNBA gave them is apparently only 15% of the projected revenue. So they're fighting for more than 15%, because if you have a percentage in there and the league is successful and revenue goes up, then player salaries will continue to rise. They don't want to lock themselves in to this salary structure and then the revenues rise dramatically for the next 5 years and the players are stuck making the same amount of money. Fun story for you in college football. You're not going to believe it, but Brennan Marion, former offensive coordinator at UNLV, took a new job. He is now going to be the Colorado offensive coordinator with Deion Sanders. That's according to CBS Sports. Brennan Marion was the head coach at Sacramento State last season. It was his only season as the head coach at Sacramento State. They went 7-5 at the FCS level. And what it means for Brennan Marion, he has never held a job in football for longer than 2 seasons. And he is only held 2 jobs for longer than 1 season. This includes high school. His first 4 years in coaching apparently were at the high school level, and he had 4 different high school jobs in 4 years. Then at the college level, he was an assistant coach at different levels and positions, but he went Arizona State, Oklahoma Baptist, Howard, William and Mary, Hawaii, Pitt, Texas, UNLV, then the head coaching job at Sacramento State, and now the OC at Colorado, which means just at the college level, 9 different schools in 11 years of college football coaching. He would never leave somebody behind. He would never dupe anybody out of anything. That is just not what Brennan Marion would do. Gloria Nevarez is going to be the Mountain West commissioner for quite a while longer. She got an extension. The Mountain West didn't announce how long it was for, but she got an extension as the commissioner of the Mountain West. And here's a genuine question that I don't know the answer to. Has she done a good job? A lot of commissioners get hatred, especially Group of 5 commissioners. But she took over in January of 2023. And obviously the big key in her time as commissioner so far is that the Mountain West is losing most of its good members. They're losing Boise State and San Diego State. They're going to be gone next year. Conference is going to be much, much worse very soon under Gloria Nevarez. Now, I think some context is very important here. San Diego State and Boise State had both tried to leave the conference before Gloria Nevarez was ever the commissioner, right? I don't think it would have mattered who the commissioner of the Mountain West was. Boise State and San Diego State were leaving. The first chance, real chance they got, they were gone. Hell, they've both done it before. They just had to come crawling back. So I don't know that you can actually hold that against her because that was going to happen no matter what. That did not matter who the commissioner was. They were trying to get out. I think she does deserve some credit for holding on to UNLV and Air Force, right? Gave them more money in the deal. In theory, they're going to get that money from the Pac-12, but gave them more money in the deal and convinced them to stay. Maybe that's a bad choice by those schools, but Gloria Nevarez got them to stay, and that held the rest of the conference together. And then, I don't want to act like this is a good thing, but she did make additions to the conference that, considering the options, pretty good, right? UTEP's coming in, Northern Illinois is going to come play football, and then Grand Canyon's coming in to play basketball. The options that are out there, I mean, who else would you take? Like, New Mexico State's really the only other, like, oh yeah, we'd take them, unless you're going to dip down into the FCS level and try to get a Dakota school to come in, or the Montana schools to come in. I don't know if that would be good, but she did add schools that I think, at the very least, sort of keep the conference from being horrendous and add schools that should promote or should provide some on-field value. I don't know if they provide television or revenue value, but at least on the field, Northern Illinois, UTEP should be fine. I think the real criticism of the last year or two, Nevarez definitely is involved here, but I don't know if she's the main one. But the real criticism, I think, is the Pac-12 and the Mountain West not merging into one. I think that blame probably falls a lot more on the Pac-12 than Mountain West leadership. The desire of Oregon State and Washington State to like not be in a conference with Wyoming is apparently what killed like any merger. And so now they're in a conference with Texas State, by the way. But I think that's the real problem here is why did they not merge? Why did these two conferences not just become one? Call it whatever the hell you want, but that clearly would have been better than what is going to happen next year. So good job there. I don't know that Gloria Nevarez deserves a lot of blame for that, though, because I think she would have done that if that had been on the table as an option from Oregon State and Washington State. Also in college football, Vanderbilt wanted to play an extra game. One of the funnier things that happened, I guess, Pete Thamel reported that Vanderbilt football was genuinely trying to schedule a game for this weekend. Remember, they're not in the SEC championship game, to, quote, give one final showcase for the college football playoff. Apparently, scheduling on the fly is not very easy, and Vanderbilt's not actually going to do this. But they're 14th in the last playoff ranking. They would have to jump 4 teams to get into the playoff. 9-3 Texas is ahead of them. BYU and Miami are ahead of them. They've got to get ahead of all of those teams. Texas and Miami aren't playing, so it's hard to imagine how Vanderbilt would do that unless they played a game and won. But all those teams are on the outside looking in. I think the first question I have, would the committee care? And or would they just view this as an exhibition? Like, would they genuinely say, oh, Vanderbilt got another win, move them up? I don't know. They might just say that's not a real game. We don't care about that. Also, how good of a team would you have to play to jump up? In theory, the teams that would have made sense would have been Vanderbilt playing Miami, because those are both teams that need a win to get in, right? That's what they need. BYU's playing for a chance to get in, but these other teams on the outside, Miami and Vanderbilt, in theory, they need to add something to their resume to jump a team. Miami might jump Notre Dame at the end of the day without playing a game, but it's not going to happen. I'll say this. It does sound kind of stupid, but it sounds fun. And I don't know what the answer is, but I kind of want to see teams do this. Can we get bubble teams playing each other? Like, can we just have, hey, the last 4 teams in, you guys are going to both play each other in conference championship weekend. That's what we're going to do every year. I'm on board. What are we doing at Allegiant Stadium? Bring them over here. It'll be fun. It could be a good way to actually do it. Also, in college football, Ohio State's head coach Ryan Day accused Michigan of cheating. Kind of. Apparently, Ohio State, when they played Michigan, lost communications with the helmets for their players during the game, and the coaches couldn't talk to the players. And Ryan Day said, we lost communication there in the second half, but the good news was that earlier that week, I thought there may be an inkling that may happen, so we had a plan for it. Talked about the wristband for Julian Sayin, and he ran over the sideline a couple of times as well. So Michigan got in trouble for stealing signs. Technically, they got in trouble for Connor Stallions going to games in person, because you can steal signs. That's not against the rules. But him going to games in person and scouting, that was the real rule breaker there. But they get in trouble for this. And now Ohio State is preparing to play them by saying, uh-oh, they might sabotage our helmet speakers, so we got to be ready to go. It's great for college football rivalries. You got to love it. But Ohio State's got that plan every week, right? They don't go in. There's no way a good team is going into a game, and if the helmet communication goes down, they're lost. They've all got to have some sort of plan, right? That's not just an Ohio State plays Michigan thing. But Ryan Day played it up, said, hey, those cheaters, our rivals over there, we knew they were going to do something sketchy, and we were ready for it. So good job by Ryan Day. One last thing, in Bischoff's briefs, unrelated to Las Vegas sports, World Cup draw takes place Friday. 9 a.m. It's going to be like 3 or 4 hours long. I don't know what the hell they're doing. It doesn't take that long to draw these things. The U.S. is hosting the World Cup this summer, or next summer, I should say, with Mexico and Canada, and we find out who the U.S. will play. I'm very excited, planning to go to at least 2 of the U.S. games in the World Cup. They're on the West Coast. It'll be great. So find out who they play today. This summer, don't worry, I will either be taking time off for the World Cup from doing this show, or I'll just do a soccer show. I might do that. You might hate it, but it might happen. But that has been Bischoff's Briefs. Again, I want to sponsor it. Let me know. It'll be really fun. Now it's time to talk about the actual important game that's happening this weekend. UNLV is playing for a Mountain West championship. And if UNLV wins, they might keep their playoff hopes alive. Just want to run down some advanced stats for you, because I love them. SP Plus gives UNLV a 51% chance to win the game. SP Plus likes UNLV. There's a guy named Parker Fleming who's got a site called Stats of War. He does a lot of stuff with EPA and success rate. His model has Boise State winning 59% of the time, so pretty decent swing towards Boise State on that one. The projected score there is 30-25 in favor of Boise State. So kind of a toss-up is what we're looking at here. Being at Boise State matters quite a bit, but UNLV's got a legitimate chance. This is not a going up against Goliath type of opponent or anything like that. Here's the big concern for UNLV. Can they stop the run? Using EPA per play, UNLV's defense this season, 61st in the country against dropbacks. So when a team drops back to pass, UNLV's defense is fine. It's not good, but it's fine. Against running plays, 113th. That's pretty miserable. Not advanced stats for you. UNLV gave up the most yards per carry in the Mountain West and the second most rushing yards per game in the Mountain West. So there's not much of anything to point to that says this run defense is anything other than just bad. And Boise State ran all over UNLV in their game in the regular season. 8.9 yards per carry. How the hell do you give up almost 9 yards per carry? 294 rushing yards as a team for Boise State, and Dylan Riley, their running back, had 201 in that game, his best game of the season. He immediately went on a 4-game terrible stretch of rushing after playing UNLV. But can UNLV stop the run at all? That's the real question here. I don't think there should be any expectation that, like, oh, they held them to 61 yards rushing and 2.9 yards per carry. That's not the expectation. Can you just hold them to like 130? Can they have a good running day, but not 9 yards a carry? If you look at the last 4 games of the regular season, UNLV won all 4, and the run defense was up and down, right? They played against Colorado State, and they were pretty good in that game. Then they were bad against Utah State. They were excellent against Hawaii, and then bad against Nevada. Nevada ran for almost 6 yards a carry on UNLV, had 193 yards. That wasn't good. The bad news is the 2 games that UNLV's run defense performed well, Colorado State and Hawaii, they're the 2 worst rushing teams in the conference. So that might be the explainer. Boise State is not this elite rushing team. They don't have Ashton Genty anymore, so obviously. But by EPA per play, they were 37th this year in EPA per carry. So they're still very good as a running team. UNLV hasn't shown any resistance to good rushing teams this season. They're going to need to do that in this game because if Boise State runs for 290-something yards and 9 yards a carry, it's hard to imagine UNLV winning. I do wonder if Maddox Madsen, the Boise State quarterback, if his health plays into UNLV's game plan at all, right? He's missed some time with injury. This is his first game back. Does UNLV say, hey, we don't believe you're healthy. Here's 9 guys in the box. Beat us one-on-one down the field with a quarterback who is or is not healthy. Might not be that extreme, but I wonder if that's maybe how UNLV comes out to start and say, hey, we need to see Maddox Madsen beat us. And if he does, then okay, all right, we might be in some trouble. But if he doesn't, just make that the overall plan and say, hey, you can't throw it. We're going to put as many guys in the box. You might still be able to run it. We might still not be able to stop it, but we're going to put as many guys in the box as possible to stop it and hopefully get enough stops defensively to win the game. The other part of this game that I'm fascinated to see, Anthony Calandria had one of his worst games of the season against Boise State. Now, Calandria had an awesome year, so his one of his worst games of the season isn't even that bad. It was 60% completion percentage, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 7.2 yards per attempt. That is not a bad day, but Calandria was so good that wasn't very good compared to what he normally did. Boise State, the thing they're best at is their pass defense. Again, EPA per play, their pass defense this year, 15th best in the entire country. Better than a lot of teams that are going to play in the college football playoff, right? Even the teams that are already in and not the potential Dukes of the world. Very good pass defense. And they had 14 picks in 12 games this year. They allowed a 54% completion percentage. They allowed just 6 yards per attempt. All those are very good numbers. They didn't have that many sacks. I thought they were going to have more sacks looking this up. They were kind of middle of the pack in the Mountain West in sacks. So not necessarily bad, but they didn't have that many sacks. They did get, I believe it was 3 against UNLV in the first meeting. So got to Calandria a little bit there. UNLV didn't give up many sacks in most of the games they played this year. So if UNLV's run defense gets plowed through again, it probably doesn't matter what Calandria does. They're not going to score enough points because they're not going to have the ball, and Boise State's going to run all over him. But if the run defense can just a little bit of resistance, right? 7 yards a carry, not 9, 150 yards on the ground, not 290. Then how does UNLV win in a shootout, and how do they do that with Calandria being awesome? He's the Mountain West Player of the Year. He needs to be really good against the best pass defense that he's played all season for UNLV to have a chance if that run defense isn't something spectacular that we haven't seen this year. And finally on this, UNLV needs to win this one. UNLV needs to win the Mountain West Championship. First off, Boise State's leaving the conference. You cannot let the team that has punked you out of the last 2 Mountain West titles do it again. Leave the conference with the trophy. You can't let that happen. You can't let them run off to a new relationship with your stuff. You need to win for the sake of the conference, for some conference pride. You also need to win for yourself. UNLV lost the 2023 Mountain West title game to Boise State. They then lost a regular season game in 2024 to Boise State. Then lost the 2024 Mountain West title game to Boise State. And then lost a regular season game this year to Boise State. A loss here would mean 5 losses to Boise State in 25 months. You can't let that happen when you're good. This isn't 2-10 UNLV. This is playing for conference titles, chance at the playoff UNLV. You can't lose to the same team 5 times in 25 months. You got to win this game. You got to finally beat Boise State, win the trophy, and send them out of the conference on the worst possible note, losing a home game for the Mountain West Championship. That's it for Bischoff's Briefs this week. First week is done. Bischoff's Briefs. That's it for Technically Correct this week. First week done of the show. I think it went pretty well. Again, I'm open to your feedback, and I really do appreciate everybody watching and listening throughout this week. It was a fun week, and I hope to be better in the future. I hope to have more fun in the future, do a lot of good shows, but I really do appreciate everybody tuning in for this week. I will see you all on Monday.